All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to talk Lake Murray, South Carolina, for a little bit because you got two events coming up here this weekend and next weekend. I apologize, I'm putting out this video a little bit sooner, but I'll follow it all up in the newsletter in terms of a lot of the different areas, especially for the KBF event, because I think that's 2 weeks out for everybody. That breaks down a lot of launch locations and all that stuff. It's a lot more good stuff because it's a massive lake. I'll include that in the newsletter, and so everybody who's traveling down. Big shout out to our region. I didn't include New York in this. I think if I included New York in the Bassmaster Kayak Open Series event on Lake Murray, February 24th and 25th coming up, 22 to 25% of the 200, almost 250 anglers, which I think is a bass record. I think Logan Martin was like the most, which was the first one. And then I think there was another one that was like 233 that first year of Bassmaster. It might have been the second year. But evidently, it's already crossed its record, so that's outstanding for that. But almost 25% of the anglers going to Lake Murray for Bassmaster are from Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. I didn't even include New York. If I included in New York and say New York had 6 or 7 anglers go, which I'm sure they did, it would be 25%. 25% of the 250 or so, it'll be 250 probably by the time this video airs, are from this area. And this is the argument that I've been making for a long time. But, I mean, falls on deaf ears, but it's okay. I don't take it personally. But that's the closest event. Okay, and so again, like I've said before, we've seen this in previous years, drop-offs after the first event of the season in terms of registrations, and a lot of it has to do with track. It doesn't have anything to do with Bass as an organization, Bassmaster, or anything to do with Steve, or anything to do with Hobie, or anything to do with AJ. Like in the macro sense, it has more to do with the scheduling sense. So Lake Murray is one of the closer events as opposed to going to Texas, going to Louisiana, going to Florida, going to Wisconsin, right? And so just think about that. I mean, this right here to me makes the case that why this region deserves an annual event, okay, or two. Within 8 hours, either Ohio or, more like that. Hobie does have New York, Cayuga this year, and Bass does have Susquehanna. And so, I mean, but the rest 6 or 7, the other 4 are way down south, and Hobie, the other 7 or 8 are way away, all that kind of stuff. But I just think it's great. West Virginia leading the way with 23 anglers. 23 of the 244, I think, right now, are from West Virginia. And when is West Virginia? Remember everybody talked about Hobie's New River disaster, whatever that was all about. It was like, those guys are traveling to Lake Murray for this Bassmaster event. Okay? And so, really showing out. Maryland had 9. Virginia has 7 currently. Pennsylvania has 12. New Jersey has 3. I'm sure Jay Kukless is one of the. Delaware has 1. I mean, that's just right in our neck of the woods. I didn't even include, like I said, New York in that. So Lake Murray, South Carolina. You guys know I have some history with Lake Murray. I know the house booked a while for this event. Booked back a while for this event. It's going to be interesting because it's February, so it's still a little early. Okay, and the weather is probably going to be probably in the mid-50s. It's just February. I mean, anything can happen. They can have bad weather, but usually February, early March, mid-50s. Maybe it gets to 60 degrees. In there, but the water temperature is certainly going to be in the high 40s, low 50s. Okay, so you got to factor it out. Now, the biggest factor for Lake Murray, no matter whenever I go down there, or the number one thing that I check isn't water temperature. The number one thing that I check is wind. Does not matter when we're going down to the house. I always look to see what week out. Kind of look at the 10-day forecast of because you're going to get rain. You always kind of get rain on the weekends. Lake Murray, I don't know what it is. A little bit, doesn't matter what the amount is, but it just seems to always happen that way. The better fishing tends to be, in the middle of the end of the week. It always tends, at least for me anyway. So, by the way, I am drinking one of the first runs of the new coffee coming out, a Sheegan blend, okay, for everyone who is a coffee lover. Excuse me. Got a cold, so I'm dealing with that. Because it's been cold here still, being out in the early mornings. But a Sheegan blend, most of you guys know who's followed the channel for a while. My brother runs a coffee company down in Georgia. And so I've been working on this and trying to devise this new coffee blend, coffee kind of spin-off for our smallmouth series, to help support guys and help support that series and the charities involved with that series. So we're going to release the Sheegan blend, and we'll see where it goes. It's going to be awesome. It is an awesome medium roast. If you're a coffee guy like me, I love coffee and whiskey. That's kind of thing. Certainly down on Lake Murray this weekend, there's going to be a lot of coffee drunk, so as well as probably some whiskey in the evenings. But Lake Murray, 50,000 acre lake, okay, 600 to 650 shoreline. There's no way, even if you had a month to pre-fish Lake Murray, are you going to be able to cover in a kayak the immensity of Lake Murray. You're just not. Okay? So when you look at this event and you look at the hammers going, you got to remember KBF had been on Lake Murray for quite a few years. Don't think Hobie always goes to Hartwell. I don't think Hobie's going to Murray. I don't know. Now, last year, Bassmaster Elite Series and the MLF Bass Pro Tour, I believe, went to Lake Murray. So it's one of those lakes, okay, that is putting money into events for kayak or for bass fishing in general, okay? No surprise that Bassmaster is going there. I know they took some heat in some of the group because KBF had been there for a while, and then, whatever, that always happens. But again, it's an outstanding fishery, so, and it's a lake, and we both know Bassmaster and the Hobie series, they love their lakes. And Bass is about ready to put over 250 anglers in that thing. I mean, could be. It's still early. We're a week away. It could be 270, 275 by the time we get down there. By the time they get down there. So, it's going to be interesting. KBF, not so much yet. I'm not really sure if we open the house up for that, to double check. And see if the house is. I actually looked to go down to Murray because it was the March. When I looked at it, it was from early March. It's another 2 weeks or weeks of warming in the water and the weather patterns and all that, and pre-spawn and all that. But we'll see what happens with that with the KBF event, and that'll be more of what I release in the newsletter for everyone based on March, what it's like in March, because February's still a little early to be on Murray, but it is what it is. So a little history about Lake Murray, okay? And you guys know this if you follow the channel, especially the smallmouth stuff from where I am. I'm a big history guy. I think it's a shame that a lot of people don't know the history of the places in which they're fishing, okay? Everyone just want to catch fish. So it's like, okay, that's great. Everybody wants to catch fish. But to kind of understand, like, what actually, what we're talking about here. We're talking about 50,000 acres. Now, originally it was 100,000. In the history of Lake Murray, if you live down there like I have, you basically, like, I want to say, like, 5 or 6 maybe, communities basically are underwater, okay? They bought the land for Lake Murray, okay? They paid $15 to $45 an acre. This is back in the 1920s. They ran people out of Dodge, okay? Communities are underwater. Churches are underwater. And there's over 2,000 graves underwater at Lake Murray. Most people don't know that. Most people don't know that there are bombers in Lake Murray. Bombers from World War II. They used to train bombers at Lake Murray, okay, up until World War II, okay? And there are bombers that crashed, as their training exercises, right? Crashed in Lake Murray. They are in Lake Murray. I actually think it's awesome now. I know a lot of people talk about this forward-facing sonar crap and this and that. It's going to ruin the sport of fishing and all this other stuff, whatever. Okay. I get it. It has got its issues. Fairness. But in this event, and in the coming up event this year from the boater side, forward-facing sonar now has changed again. I know a lot of people that fish on Lake Murray that have forward-facing sonar. It's changed the game for them on their own home lake. Okay? because of the immensity of the middle section of Lake Murray. Now, Lake Murray is divided, if you talk to anybody, I think it's more like 4 or 5 sections because the place fishes, if you're from Virginia, I always say Murray reminds me the most, Lake Anna in Virginia reminds me the most of Murray of any of the lakes, including Smith Mountain, of any of the lakes in our region, in terms of Lake Murray. But most people will tell you there's 3 sections to Lake Murray. There's the lower section. Now, that's the dam section. That's the Dryer Shoals section, okay? Dryer Shoals, never heard that. Of course you haven't, because everybody calls it Lake Murray Dam now. Well, it wasn't called Lake Murray Dam until basically our lifetimes, okay? But it used to be called Dryer Shoals. That's what it used to be called, okay? And then Murray was the guy who basically was designing and all of that stuff for the dam. This dam was built over like 3-4 years, 1927 to 1930. Okay, think about this for a second. This dam cost roughly $20 million to build. If you've ever been to Lake Murray, $20 million to build this dam in 1930. Okay, that's when they opened it up. That's when they let the water come in, fill the reservoir that is currently known as Lake Murray. Okay. 20 million. Now, they have subsequently built a secondary backup dam on Lake Murray, okay, in, I want to say around 2004 or 5, around that time frame. I know it was after 9/11. So it's 2004, 2005, I think, that finally got done. That cost $275 million. What does that tell you right there about the way things are these days? And how things have happened and the change in the dollar from a $20 million dam built in 1930 to a $275 million backup dam built in around 2004, 2005. So it's kind of crazy. But you're talking 763 gallons of water. Think of it that way in this lake. Like I said, 600, depending on who you ask, 620 to 660 miles of shoreline on this thing. And like I said, that lower section is the dam, okay? And that lower section has a lot of, okay, first of all, it's a huge striper, which reminds me of a lot of fisheries here. He has a huge striper population that you can get into. It's got schooling fish. It's got, a big herring population. It's got everything that screams school fishing, forward-facing sonar now. Why? Because it's got cane poles, brush piles, open water. It does have that schooling herring, shad thing. I just think electronics are a bigger deal. And then that section runs, probably from like east of Dryer Island, okay, all the way to Dryer Shoals, okay, all the way to Lake Murray Dam. That's pretty much the lower section, the eastern section of Lake Murray. And then from, basically you've got Bomb Island, Dryer Island is kind of in the middle, right? It's more or less kind of centrally located in the middle of the lake. And then when you go from Dryer Island, basically west to, it depends on who you talk to. I would say like Acapulco, I guess that's what it's called. In the south part of the lake, running up to the creek, to Buffalo Creek, okay, where is my favorite creek on the lake, especially in the spring. Making that, you can go out and check previous videos. It's where the house is, and so awesome creek fishing. Now in February, grass isn't in yet. Frog bite's probably not going to be in play. Buzzbait's probably not going to be in play. Okay, it's February, all right? That's just the reality of that, and that's kind of what I communicated to people, that are going to, always ask me to make the call for them on, that are going down on what they should do, is you got to understand what's the water temperature and the grass development and all of that stuff that's going on for the creeks. I love to creek fish on Lake Murray. I'm not a big open water guy. You guys know that. I'm not a big forward-facing sonar or electronics guy yet. I'm still learning. I'm still in kindergarten when it comes to forward-facing sonar. It's not. I'm more of a river bassin kayak guy, skinny water, dog walk the kayak, go into small shit. I don't need freaking forward-facing sonar for what I do, okay? But when you go to a big lake, You know what I mean? It does come in handy. I will just say that. Especially now in the lower section of Lake Murray. When you get in the middle section, it's still effective. But in the middle section of Lake Murray, you've got a ton of structure is what the only way I could work. Crystal Lake, Hollow Creek, docks all around the southern end. You can go get a dock bite. You can go get a shoreline shallow bite. They're there. You've got a lot of rock that's man purposed. What I mean by that is they put rocks down on shorelines in order for erosion and things like that, because they've got these $1 million houses now going up all over Lake Murray. Okay, they have for like the last decade. Okay, and they keep going up. Okay, on all the points and all that stuff. So you've got rocks that they've dumped that come down the sides and actually go into the water. Okay, so you've got all that stuff. So that comes into play in the middle section. Okay, it's clear water. It's a different kind of water than I believe the lower section is. The thermals are different than by the dam and in the middle section as well. But this is a lot of water, okay? It is a lot of water. So I expect those two sections for the Bassmaster Kayak. Now remember, when you're in a kayak, okay, you're not running and gunning, all right? You're not. And so Murray sets up better. This is my criticism for lakes and kayaks, okay? I mean, in terms of really big lakes. Not a big fan. But I am a huge fan of Lake Murray. But for kayak events, it comes down to the skill and decision making of where you're going to access the water. Otherwise, you're going to be on top of, like I said, there's over 200 anglers in this event. And if a third of them or half of them traditionally launch from the two locations that I know that most people in these type events, former KBF events over the years, and other kayak fishing events launch from, they're going to, I mean, again, there's a lot of open water. They're not going to be on top of one another, but they're going to be able to see each other for miles, okay? And so you're going to be in that Crystal Lake section off of Dryer Island, okay? Or on the eastern side of Dryer Island. You're going to be around a lot of other anglers, okay? Especially if you concentrate in that section. Because there are significant known brush piles, for example, structure. Like I said, there's a lot of things in the reservoir, okay? Down, all right? And now with forward-facing sonar, people are recognizing and finding these stuff. They're finding fences. They're finding things on Lake Murray, that are structure-oriented, okay? And so you've got that. But it's still early with the grass development, okay? It's February, right? So that comes into play. And then the third section, again, like traditionally, like I said, most people see the river as slice it up into three sections. The lower, the mid, and then the upper or western section. Okay, I prefer the western section. Now, why do I prefer the western section? Because that's where my biggest fish have come from. That's where my most fish have come from. And that's the section that sets up for how I like to fish. Okay, so if you're a forward-facing sonar guy, if you're a offshore guy, if you're a, you like to drop shot brush piles and do that kind of fishing, then you're going to focus on the middle section and the lower section. You're not going to go up to the western section as much. There are some creeks, obviously, and I would say that Buffalo Creek is kind of like the dividing line straight down the lake and then everything west. But the western side sets up more for river anglers. Okay, there is a section of that section that is still kind of lake-ish, okay? But for the most part, it's Saluda. For the most part, it sets up like a river. West of like Hollow Creek and kind of like the middle section. And then when you go up to the Saluda River, okay? So if you're a river angler and you like structure, if you like fallen timber, if you like fishing under trees, if you like, the occasional like man-made structure, a bridge, an isolated dock, a ramp area or something, that is where you're going to find it. You can go way up, okay, especially if you have a motor. We all know Bassmaster events and kayak bass fishing events and Hobie events are all motorized now. That is going to change the trajectory of all those trails now, especially Hobie, having that availability, because then you can just run up, and cover more water than you would have been able to in prior Hobie events, for example. But in bass events, there's always been a motor allowed. But I'm just saying, so you can launch and then get up, okay, into areas where you're going to be fishing most likely alone. You could be fishing with one other person for sure. Okay, it really, this lake is probably the best lake, in my opinion, they've ever scheduled that sets up for just about every single angler's strength. Doesn't mean you're going to win the event. Okay, what I'm saying is I'm speaking to individuals. Like, how do you like to fish? Identify how you like to fish, and then go and target that area and let the dice roll, right? Because you don't know. It's February. I think that western portion of the lake is going to provide some big bass, okay? Because of what's happening as it's transitioning, okay? You've also got the fact that which part of the lake is going to be warmer in February, okay? If you have that knowledge, okay, you understand that that's how lakes and rivers work in terms of the seasons and which creeks are going to warm up faster, okay? That's a huge thing to research, okay? Like I said, I prefer the northern part of the lake. I prefer Buffalo Creek. I prefer, the landing, in the middle of Murray and above. There are people who prefer the southern end of the lake, okay? But most people that I know run all over the lake because they're running in boats, okay, not kayaks. And so that's like important distinction to understand. Where are you going to launch from, okay? And if you want to be entangled with 50, 60 other anglers, which my guess is going to be in the middle of the lake, okay? It's going to be in that middle section because they're going to launch from drier. They're going to launch from heavily populated launches because they're coming from all across the country. They don't have much time. And like I said, 3, 4, 5 days of pre-fishing going into an event on Lake Murray, while it gives you perspective, there's in a kayak, you're not covering that lake, everything that lake has to offer. There is a massive amount of creeks and that come, just look at the map of Lake Murray and you'll know what I'm talking about. There's creek arms, there's points, there's secondary points, there's tons of different opportunities for you to catch fish on Lake Murray, even in February, because there are resident fish. And that's probably the number one question I always get whenever an event like on Murray comes around. For me, is it's like, yeah, there are tons of resident fish that never leave the creeks. Now, there are ones who leave the creeks and go into the main part of Murray, but there's tons of resident bass, okay, that stay in these creeks year round. Okay, they will spawn in those creeks. They will do everything in those creeks, okay? It's just a matter of, your presentation and the time of year and slowing it down and doing those things that are going to work, for you. This is why I'm of the opinion that we're going to see more people in the next 2 weeks because of the maturation of forward-facing sonar and electronics on kayaks and events. We're going to see more guys in the open water and the clearer water for this event, I believe. I don't think that most people have the right mentality of understanding that there are fish to be caught in the creeks in February. I think they're still going to be pigeonholed by that overarching opinion that bass are going to go to deeper water late wintertime, and that's just not always the case. And Lake Murray is one of those examples. Now, if we were April and May, of course, people are going to be flooding the creeks, okay? Because the temperatures are going to be up, and their notion of the migration and the fishing patterns change, right? If I said, hey, we're going to fish in April in Lake Murray, people are going to tell me in the grass in the creek, somebody throwing a frog, right? April, May, you know what I mean? But if you say February, they're like, you know what I mean? And so I believe a lot of people are going to double down on open, clearer water, lower section, midsection, fishing deeper water, because they're of that mentality that the bass are going to be suspended or in deeper water. They're also going to have a problem running in with stripers, and that's what problem I always run into whenever I go east of Dryer and I go fishing. Over the years in that area is you always get into stripers. And so in a tournament setting, where every bite matters and time matters, I'm not really sure if that's something that guys should do, but they'll do it. because there are significant brush piles and cane poles and all that, in structure down in there that they can, they can fish for largemouth bass from, in the hopes of getting that big fish. For sure, I'm just more of a shallow guy, and so that's my strength. So that's how I approach any lake to begin with. Because I like structure, I like natural structure, but I also like timber. I like that kind of stuff. The bends and reading rivers and those kinds of things. And so that is Lake Murray, okay, in a nutshell, right? Should have over 245, 250, maybe even 260, 65 anglers registered up by next weekend, which is a huge showing for Bassmaster to get, I think their season started, or maybe this is the second event. I can't remember. Still massive. To get it, get things like that, for a Lake Murray. And I just think it's a great regional event. That's one where they know now that they're going to pull 25% of the total number of anglers from the Mid-Atlantic region because they're down in Columbia, South Carolina, right? And there's no other events. Bassmaster has no events between Columbia, South Carolina and, Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, my dad's hometown, okay? There's no other events covering that 10 hours, maybe 11 hours, okay? And so it should send a message to Bassmaster. Like, look at this angle, look at where you're pulling 25% or more, depending on what happens, from the event. You know what I mean? And I think that's just like a cool like thing for our region. Sorry. And and I'm hoping that the guys from West Virginia, like I said, 23 guys from West Virginia, I hope they show out. I really do. I hope they show out and and kick this thing off. We've got some hammers from Virginia and Pennsylvania also from our region hitting this event up. Well-known guys, like Casey Reed from Virginia. Fishes these events, huge hammer, and then Maryland's got like nine or so peeps from Maryland. So you know what I mean? We got a lot of guys going down, and so I'm hoping that the guys at the house do well, and I'm hoping that the guys in the overall event do well, and that this event shows out for Lake Murray. I think there are other lakes like Lake Murray that both Bassmaster and Hobie should consider, and they haven't gone there yet in their histories. I really think that they should go there. I really think that they need to schedule an event, that's central to Mid-Atlantic. That's not a river. If you're going to go lakes, no, we're just talking lakes. I have tons of rivers I can recommend. Obviously the Potomac, obviously the James, okay, but the Delaware maybe. But I mean, like, okay, but if we're going to go with lakes, there's a lot of lakes that could begin Virginia, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, in that area that could mitigate closer driving times for a lot of people from way, way up. I think John Brooks is fishing this event. He's coming all the way from Maine. Okay? Maine all the way down to Columbia, South Carolina. All right? That's massive. Okay? And so that's more what I'd like to see. But anyway, this is quick just on Lake Murray event. Kudos to Bassmaster for hitting that record mark, I believe, that will hit the record mark for this event in terms of, I don't know if it'll be the largest kayak bass fishing event because I just don't know. Someone will have to shoot in the comments if it's the largest ever. In the history of these events. I'm just not sure. But it's massive. 250 guys. That's 62, 250 times 250, $63,000 in entry fees. Think about that for one event. Okay? At $250 per, say 250 anglers. Make it easy math. It's like 62,500. Okay? That's crazy. But kudos to Bassmaster. Just check it out. I don't know if it's live or not, or they're going to have on that for the event. I'm not sure. But you can find that probably on Bassmaster.com and follow that information for Lake Murray, February 24th, 25th, 2-day tournament. Okay, 2-day cumulative tournament on Lake Murray for Bassmaster.